took off the goose, yeah, thinking that I'm too pop, getting caught with a few thoughts, cause I'm too lost. Off the speakers can't even handle me, giving what I got, nobody's gonna drain my energy. And I will never stop, I'm motivated by enemies, setting up shop so everybody remember me.
More about the history of Italian cuisine in the 20th century. Marinetti wanted to bring together food and art, but art intended as he and futurists intended it. Centered on progress, colorful, powerful, innovative, focusing on unusual ingredients, just as futurist art focused on unusual art matters and subjects. In other words, Marinetti wanted a type of cuisine that was at once creative and cheap and able to take people away from their gastronomic conservatism. His idea was to kick pasta out of the kitchen because it made people inactive, nostalgic, lethargic, and nihilist. His culinary battle had a true manifest published in the 1931 on Commedia. However, the cucina futurista remained mostly theoretical in nature. Its most famous restaurant, the Taverna Santo Palato, opened its doors in the central Turin on the 8th of March 1931, but remained open only a couple of years. The futurist restaurant of Turin didn't last long, but certainly left some interesting dishes behind, memorable if not for their taste, certainly for their name. On a side note, while Marinetti was busy dousing pigs in perfume, Umberto Notari founded La Cucina Italiana, the first and still today best loved and renowned recipes magazine of the country, in 1929. Marinetti's flamboyancy in the kitchen didn't encounter the favors of Italian housewives. Just as quickly as the Cucina Futurista arrived, it was forgotten, even through its search for alternative ingredients, curious names, and war against carbs is reminiscent of some modern extreme dieting regimes. Fascism and Second World War in the history of Italian cuisine in the 20th century. Just as it changed people's habits and behaviors for the 20th something years, it ruled fascism, also influenced profoundly the aesthetic of Italy, and to a certain extent, also the way we cooked. Of course, this latter circumstance was very much tied to the fact the country had to face very specific circumstances throughout the land to the regime. A world economic crisis, 1929, the implementation of a fully autarchic regime throughout the 30s and during the war, and of course a world war between 1940 and 1945. So what did happen in the kitchen during the Ventennio? Well, first of all, we had to be frugal. Waste was a no-no, and saving money as well as ingredients was essential. Feeding the family with flavorsome yet cheap dishes became a symbol itself of the brava messiah, the good housewife, a figure much dearer to Mussolini. First because autarky, an economy-based regime according to which a country should rely only and exclusively on produce and products coming from within its own borders, and to forced families to make do with what was available in the country. Then, because the war placed the nation, who had just began to find its way after the destruction and hunger of the First World conflict, once more in a situation of economic restriction, where hunger became a fierce issue, especially in the urban area. Food products during the Second World War in Italy. Certain ingredients, such as coffee, sugar, salt or butter, were rationed. The bread was usually brown, and the meat was a rare delicacy. Italian women made a virtue of necessity and managed to keep the country well-fed throughout the conflict. Lack of meat was supplied by a larger use of vegetables and pulses, often mixed with meat stock to flavor. Famous is recipe for meatballs, for using only half of a pound of meat within one half pound of spinach, 3 ounces of ricotta and 1 egg. The mixture divided a little balls and fried in half of spoon of butter was served by diluted tomato sauce and could feed a family of 6 people. Recipes were adapted to some on all ingredients that were rationed, such as butter. Even methods of preservation for vegetables were changed to save precious olive oil and butter. For instance, eggplant usually preserved in olive oil were kept in savour, which was a type of pickling procedure. What is interesting is not the pickling, but the fact that a stratagem was invented to make a little olive oil last longer. When the moment of frying the eggplants came, only 1 or 2 tablespoons of oil had to be poured into the pan, but a gauze filled with coarse salt was to be placed at the center of it. By doing so, the housewives of the time maintained you could keep on frying much longer. Cuisine in the 1950s and the rebirth of Italy. Continuing the history of Italian cuisine in the 20th century, we arrived at the 50th years in Italy. The years after the end of the war bring us into what we can consider the area of Italian contemporary cuisine. In the 50s, Italian kitchens became more technological and thanks to cooking appliances. Cooking times were diminished significantly. After some years of post-war hardship in the 1950s, Italy was finally ready to find long-desired stability and wealth. The years of the economic boom brought into Italian kitchens, as said, new appliances, fridges, gas cookers and ovens. Washing machines changed people's habits in the kitchen and also the way we cooked. Women began to work and the time to dedicate to cooking diminished significantly. Many things once considered either too expensive or not fancy enough to be cooked were embraced as the holy grail of quick cooking. Chicken breast and veal being the most notable examples of it. Many other ingredients, however, disappeared from Italian ladders because considered too old-fashioned or too cumbersome to prepare. Polenta, legumes, cabbage, parsnips, and sweets only managed to make them more back a couple of decades later. 1950 is the year of publication of another seminal Italian cuisine text, Il Cucchiaino di Argento, the silver spoon. For the first time, recipes want to be similar and of easy execution. Time has become essential, and more women work outside the home and no longer have entire days to spend in the kitchen. More importance on Il Cucinario di Argento is witness to that is also given to how healthy and light food and recipes are. For the first time in Italian history, the country is healthy and wealthy enough to worry about eating less rather than packing up the calories for survival. Italy had become a first world country. Modern Italy and the history of Italian cuisine in the 60s and 70s. With the full industrialization of the country and development in the 60s and 70s of a powerful tertiary sector, women began to be a steady presence of Italy's workforce, and time to spend in the kitchen diminished, creating an open market for ready-to-eat dishes. Besides the rise in popularity of fast food, the 70s and the 80s witnessed other changes in the way we cooked. These are the years of the Italian Nouvelle cuisine, inspired by French counterpart, endorsed and symbolized by one of Italian's most representative chefs, Gualtiero Marchesi. The Nouvelle cuisine in France, just as in Italy, was based on the idea of cooking had to be creative and that rules excited to be broken. Chefs began to experiment with flavors and brought back a like for simplicity. Cooking times had to be reviewed, and local and fresh became the true mantra of Italian chefs, but not as sign of respect to tradition, but rather as a way to embrace a new way to prepare food. However, it was not all novel cuisine. Italians of the 80s in particular became very fond of intricate recipes, rich in cream and mayonnaise. Somehow still popular in Anglo-Saxon Europe, penne with vodka, cream and salmon sauce, tortellini with ham and cream, Murray Rose sauce for fish. The kitchen of the 1980s, Italy mirrored the wealth and comfortable of the Italian society of the time. Those were also the years where everything ended up in jelly, cheese, eggs, ham, everything. Today these recipes, also occasionally still a pleasure to try, have been put aside in favor of flavors and combinations closer to our Italian traditions. The progressive entry of processed foods into the Italian market and the rise in popularity of fast food chains have made, however, some positive consequences. After about 2 decades of the increasing popularity of non-healthy, non-Italian grub, the country has reached with pride and returned to its culinary roots, embracing once again those dishes and ingredients that helped to make Italian food famous all over the world.